I'm Nic Harcourt for AKG's Stories Behind the Sessions with singer-songwriter Jackson Browne. Among the many, many songs Jackson has written, These Days, first recorded in 1967 by Velvet Underground singer and Warhol chanteuse Nico, was written when he was just 16 years old. A few years later, in 1972, he scored his first two hit singles, Dr. My Eyes from his self-titled debut album and The Eagles' Take It Easy, which he co-wrote with Glenn Frey. With a career spanning 7 decades, Jackson's work is a part of the cultural fabric of America, with songs like Late for the Sky, The Pretender, Here Come Those Tears, Running on Empty, Somebody's Baby, Lawyers in Love, Tender is the Night, and Barricades of Heaven being just a few. Jackson joins us on this episode to talk about the recording of his self-titled debut album, which included the song Dr. My Eyes, and the follow-up For Every Man, which featured his recording of These Days. Thanks so much for being here with us today.
Thanks for having me.
Great to see you.
Good to see you.
Thank you. You know, before we get to the songs and the studio, maybe I could ask you a little bit about growing up with your brother, a couple of sisters here in Los Angeles, and what inspired you in your teens to start playing music. What was your first instrument?
I started playing the trumpet. My father was into Dixieland jazz. He loved horns himself. We had our living room he had an alcove with like 4 or 5 horns, a trombone and a trumpet, or a cornet and a sousaphone. I mean, he'd walk around the house playing the horn. But he was a pianist, and he wanted me to play the trumpet. And I did for a while. I mean, it's not the kind of instrument you can play at a party. I wanted to play guitar. My brother had a guitar, and so I started playing guitar. Everybody played guitar. And my sister played guitar and sang.
Who were you listening to?
Like I say, everybody played guitar. So friends of mine would teach me things to play, and there were folk groups that they listened to. But there was that kind of commercial folk music that was being made by folk trios. But they didn't really, to tell you the truth, one of the first records I ever owned was a Leadbelly record, and my father had taken me to see Lighton Hopkins play at the Ash Grove. And he loved Barbara Dane, who was also a white blues singer. And her piano player played trumpet as well as piano, so he would back her up on piano, and occasionally he'd reach over and play a solo, play a break on the. My father loved that. He loved the guy that could play piano and trumpet at the same time. I mean, you'd listen to the Weavers or Cisco Houston and Woody Guthrie and folk music, real traditional folk music caught my ear pretty early, and but of course Bob Dylan. One of the first albums I ever bought also was a Joan Baez record. So I listened to, folk music. And one of the next records I bought was a record called Blues, Rags, and Hollers, which was these 3 guys from Minnesota who were white, young, urban white blues singers. Dave Ray, John Kerner, and Tony Glover. I loved that record because they didn't really play all together at the same time. They were like a group of friends that were playing on each other's songs, and I liked that. And that seemed to me like a lot like what went on with me and my friends.
Did you see yourself at the beginning as a songwriter or as a performer?
Oh, a songwriter, yeah. But I mean, I like to sing. We all sang the songs that were on the radio, and for what I was trying to do was play guitar. Like after a while, I was able to give lessons to other kids because I could finger pick. I got pretty good at certain kinds of playing, and I taught other kids my own age or younger. That's how I made my money as a kid.
So as a songwriter, your songwriting took you to.
Sometimes I teach them my songs.
That's pretty funny.
I know it's embarrassing now, but I mean, at the time I thought I'd rather be listening to one of my songs. They come in and say, "Could you teach me?" Or maybe the mom would say, "Can you teach, Dennis how to sing, Mrs. Brown, You've Got a Lovely Daughter?" And I go, "Yeah, I can teach him that." But listen, what?
But I've got this great song.
I like the song, but check this out.
Yeah. So you
I was about 16. Yeah.
Do you remember your first day going into the studio?
No, I don't remember my first day. What I remember is the highlights. I remember being at the piano, and this is Russ Kunkel and Lee Sklar. It's just 3 pieces, right? And these guys were such great musicians that they really made everything sound very full and complete, even if it was only a few pieces. And it left room for some other stuff to happen if you wanted. So I remember that the song "Dark to My Eyes" was, anytime I would sing it, I try to suggest the rhythm of the song. And that was just
On the piano.
and I sang the whole song without going through the whole song, which was not good, you know. Especially if you're gonna have drums or anything play it, you'd have to stop playing that and play something else.
Right.
So the highlight, what I think about when I think about playing with those guys first, was the revelation of realizing I could change what I was doing and listen to them and join up with them. And that's the job in the studio. So I thought to myself, well, if I don't do that, what if I could just go, don't, 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 don't. Because there are a lot of Beatles songs that did that. Woke up.
It's exactly what was in my head. Yeah.
That kind of, you know.
Yeah.
But so and they put all this music into it, and all I had to do was play. I knew the chords. All I knew was a few chords. That's the job, is to figure out how to change what I was doing so that it'll work with what the other people are playing. That song was cut with the three of us playing. I played these fours, you know, dun, gun, 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 gun. Well, what made it swing was the congas. It wasn't cut to drums and bass. It was cut to bass and congas. And all that feeling and all that swing was in there. Lee and I had to do was dun, 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 dun. But Russell put all that swing in. And then we added the drums. Then also the guitar part wasn't there until that was an overdub. And that was the great Jesse Ed Davis, who came in and played that solo once. He plugged in, and he was every note you hear on the record was him. He was tuning up. He got to what it sounded like was probably the solo. He said, "Okay, is that the solo? Great. Okay, run back. Okay." And then he
Played it.
Hit record. And we didn't go back to the beginning. We went to where the solo starts, and he played that solo. Then he started to pack up his guitar, and I said, "Wait." I mean, that was great. I mean, we're not going to make you play that again, but could you play at the end too? He said, "Oh yeah, I could do it."
Okay.
And also, the engineer said, "And could you put the headstock of your guitar on the amp and go dong, dong?" And he sounded like a dork saying this, dong, dong. And Jesse looked at him like, and he had this great. He was like, you know, like big guy. He was Indian, full-blooded Kiowa and Comanche, from Oklahoma. He said, "Well, I've spent my entire career avoiding putting the headstock on the guitar and getting it to feedback. But for you, I'm going to do it. Roll the tape." He was so condescending. But my engineer was right. That was exactly the right thing.
Right.
I ran into him after that record was released, and he was really surprised. I said, "Oh," you know, because he didn't put much effort into it. What he put into it was his just natural genius. And even now, I mean, even in more recent years, I'd go write a song. I'd be writing a song in Spain. I'd be like by myself. I'd be there for a while. I'd come back with a song that I wanted to play with my band. And as soon as we started playing it, I realized, oh, you don't want to hear two verses before you get to the chorus. You want to go right to the chorus. If you do that, and they would play something great next for the chorus, but you didn't want to wait for two verses to go by, and then I have to throw that verse away. I literally had to scratch that, which is annoying. It's not the end of the world, but so what I realized is that I can leave songs unfinished, and that's what I do more now. Starting with about The Pretender, like my fourth album, I started finishing songs in the studio once I knew more about what people were playing. And that's, for me, what makes the studio like a real workspace and a crucible. You know, you're making stuff up, as opposed to having everything all stuck, you know, arranged and then you're just executing it.
So you're on the fly in the studio. You've got the bones, but
right.
You're writing and finishing
exactly
while you're recording.
Yeah.
Touring, of course, is bread and butter for most musicians, and I'm guessing that hitting the road was a crucial part of the story. How did the success of that first album change the equation for you?
Well, I'd been playing gigs by myself, and I could go out and play those songs. But when I went to go put together a band to play that album, the guys that I played with were good musicians, but they weren't as good as Russ Kunkel and Lee Sklar. And I couldn't afford Russ Kunkel and Lee Sklar. And they also, if you see their recent film about them called The Immediate Family, they talk about being afraid to leave town on a tour because someone else would take their spot in the studio players, you know, like
Yeah, they wanted to stay in town.
They want to stay in town and keep their gigs in the studio, and they were doing really well there.
Right.
It was a long time before I could afford them. It was like 4 albums. So after my fourth album, I could hire them, and that was running on empty.
Right.
And even then they said, well, I don't know if we should I don't know, what do you got? And I said, I said, I'll pay you as an opening act. You can be the opening act. And they had a band at that time called The Section. I said, I'll pay you as my band, and I'll pay you a production fee. I take a production, usually that producer's got 3% or something. I give you, of this album we're gonna make, I'll give you 3% to split. You guys split it 4 ways. And so I paid them 3 ways and they couldn't say no. They couldn't. It was a good deal. You can't say that I overpaid them either. If anything, the success of that album kind of makes me feel like I should pay them more. Don't tell them I said that. But the thing is that how do you pay for the music that people give to a song or a record? Some of the greatest performances of all time are like somebody got paid scale, or double scale, and the producer got the money, but or the artist made the money, and the record companies made the money. But they're starting to remedy that. They're starting to have a ASCAP and after funds that go find the people that play it on a record and give them a royalty, give them like money for songs that appeared. The job is to serve the music that's being made, and you can't really pay enough, for what people give to you in the studio. I mean, David Lindley is a great example of that. David Lindley, I started working with him on my second album, and I knew him before my first album. And I went to England and recorded a couple songs or a song with him, and nothing ever came of that. Or the producer I was working with didn't continue to be my producer, and I don't know where the tapes are, but he stayed in England. So when I came back and was working, I wanted to record with him, but he wasn't here. So I made that first album without him. When I started working with him was on the second album, and he, I just recorded him until he plays something really brilliant, and then that would be it. That would be the arrangement. That was my way of arranging songs. Was like wait for something great to happen.
Let's talk about that album. It includes the title track that I referenced earlier, recorded by Nico.
Yeah.
Also covered by Greg Allman. I was down an internet wormhole a couple of nights ago getting ready for our conversation today, and I found you and Greg performing the song together back in 2014 in Atlanta.
Yeah.
Beautiful footage. Listening to Greg and Nico's versions of the song, though, and then yours, they're very different.
Yeah.
Nico's is a very simple acoustic guitar, some plucking, strings are beautiful.
Electric guitar, actually.
Yep. So you?
It was an acoustic guitar part that I played on an electric guitar.
Yeah.
Which to this day, I mean, somebody came up to me the other day and asked me, okay, what guitar was that? What amp was it? And I told him I couldn't figure it out.
Yeah, Greg's recording of the song is slow, it's sultry. It sounds like a Southern song. Well, it's a very different version of the song, and it's amazing how songs can sound so different in the instrumentation that you put on.
Well, here's how it's not even the instrumentation as much as the tempo. He played it really down. He played it, and the album of his that it was on was called Laid Back, and in marked contrast to the Allman Brothers music, which was very high energy and blues. It was more melodic and it was laid back. So he made These Days in halftime. I thought that was much more emotionally appropriate for what the song is talking about.
Yeah, it sounds like he's sort of wading through molasses as he's performing this song.
He was a great singer and wonderfully like Bonnie Raitt, somebody that spends their life singing blues, but then is given a melody or a lyric, that they bring a kind of feeling to it that is just deeper and more expressive. So yeah, his version, I loved Nico's version, but and that was, that was pretty unknown. Like, not that many people heard that outside of that sort of,
Warhol bubble.
Warhol scene, and
Yeah.
but eventually everybody heard that. It became more, the most well-known song from that record, and something that people. I mean, Nico did a lot of work after that. She didn't care for it, actually. She didn't really like the way that came out. She didn't like the strings. Everybody who did that song made it better. And as different as they were, they added their own thing, to it.
So your career has covered many decades with hits from the 70s onwards. When you look back at your body of work, how does it look with hindsight?
I feel good about these songs because I grew up on songs that lasted many years. Folk music. These are songs that have lasted generations and a century or so, or something, maybe more than a century. So you're aiming for something that will last. When the first time I heard someone say that rock and roll was a disposable art form, I thought, wait, that can't be right. We're already loving songs that were recorded 50 years ago or 60 years ago. So I like what I've done, but I've always been more concerned with what I want to do next. So it's not like I want to, and I would go out there and do like my new album and do almost only that, And my friends would say, dude, people came to hear what they know.
Sure,
you should never, like Scott Thurston would say, Heartbreakers only play 2 new songs in a set. They don't play a whole set. No, people didn't really, they might love them later, but they don't love them yet. You got to have to just play a few, What I like is that I've got a bunch of songs that I've overlooked or haven't been playing for years. I mean, I didn't play These Days for many years. I never played Take It Easy because it was an Eagles hit, and if I played it, people would say, oh yeah, and then he did an Eagles cover. And I thought, fair enough,
sucks.
Just play.
Yeah.
But I always want to do something new, so that's when I'm hoping to write something new. But I feel pretty good about how many songs I have that I could go to, that especially ones that I haven't been fully, like I say, weren't fully realized at the time. And it's a good feeling. Like I like what I've talked about. In some cases, I've talked about subjects that are difficult. I think I was telling you earlier when I said, sometimes it works and sometimes it's just, it's very, but it's worth trying. My favorite songs are sometimes really just not the ones I work the hardest on. Sometimes the ones you work the hardest on will always have that sort of fraught with endeavor quality that'll be like,
You've written and recorded a lot of songs and records since those couple of albums we were talking about in this conversation. And you're still active, you're still busy. I saw you perform a benefit show for the station I work at a couple of months ago. What's going on with you right now, creatively?
Well, I needed to get off the road. I was touring too much, and so last year I stopped touring, but I didn't stop doing gigs, like you said. I played a benefit for your radio station, KCSN, and also, but I've done a bunch of benefits, and I'm gonna wind up being as busy doing benefits this year as I would have been touring, because you have to actually, I might learn some different songs to do in a particular. I'm gonna open for Taj Mahal at a concert in North Carolina for the Music Maker Foundation, and I'll need to do different songs for that, and I've played with only a part of my band. But anyway, it kind of make up. Each of these events is sort of a bespoke, arrangements and curated especially for that event. But no, I'm actually just writing. I'm spending time with my family, which was way overdue. My grandson's 5, and I see him off and on during this time, but I haven't, so I needed to stop touring, but I also need to start up again next year, so we'll see. Right. I think people know that live music is inherently more interesting than recorded music. Your chance to record something in the studio is a chance to define it. but it may not get defined for all time. And what's more is like Lindley's a great example. Like he played, and that was a live recording. Running on Empty is that record live. The whole album was live, but that particular song, Running on Empty, that solo, which is a kind of perfect thing, you know, was the only time he played those exact notes. After that, he played some other great stuff. And people come to see what's going to happen or see what people are going to play. The guys in my band always play different stuff. They do play the cardinal points of an arrangement. Now, they really have to play the architecture of the song and deliver the song.
Sure.
But each time, it's like they're singing too, and it's a chance for them to express a particular emotion or a thought in the moment. So there's no canned solos. There's a couple of tricks we do. There's stuff like a basketball team, you've got plays. You don't expect to hear somebody play the same thing night after night.
It's great talking to you. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks a lot.